Okay, so today we're going to review the topic of order of operations, and we're going to use these order of operations to simplify expressions without a calculator. So the first thing we're going to review, something you've probably heard before, is the acronym PEMDAS, which stands for parentheses, exponents, multiplication and division, and then addition and subtraction. So we're going to use that order to help us simplify each of these 6 problems. So the first one, when we take a look at number 1, the first thing we're looking for is, does the problem have parentheses? And we see that it does, and those parentheses have 2 minus 4 inside them. So we're going to simplify 2 minus 4 first, which is negative 2, and then we're going to rewrite the problem with negative 2 inside the parentheses instead of 2 minus 4. Okay, so our next step here is to see, do we have any exponents? And we see that we do. We have 2 exponents. We have 3 squared, and we also have negative 2 squared. So 3 squared we know is 9, because squaring something means you multiply it by itself. So 3 times 3 is 9. We keep our subtraction sign there. And then we have negative 2 squared, which means negative 2 times negative 2, which is positive 4. A negative times a negative is a positive. And then we just bring down our plus 7. And now we see the only things that we have left here are subtraction and addition. Whenever you have subtraction and addition in the order of operations, those are equal to each other, so we're going to work from left to right now on. So 9 minus 4 is 5, and 5 plus 7 would equal 12. So fully simplified, this is 12. Okay, so taking a look at number 2 here. We do have parentheses, but these parentheses right here are actually just acting as multiplication. There's nothing actually happening inside the parentheses. We just have a negative 2. So really all we have here is 2 operations. We have division and we have multiplication. In the order of operations, division and multiplication hold the same spot. You don't do multiplication before division just because the m comes before the d. What you do is, when you have multiplication and division, those are equivalent. When you have addition and subtraction, those are equivalent. So what we're going to do, since we just have multiplication and division, we're going to work from left to right. So the first thing we have here is 32 divided by 4. 32 divided by 4 is 8. Now I'm going to bring down my multiplied by negative 2. 8 times negative 2 equals negative 16. Therefore, our simplified answer here is negative 16. Okay, so our next one, we actually have a fraction. Whenever you have a fraction and you're working with the order of operations, you simplify the numerator and the denominator separately. So what we're going to first take a look at is the red portion here. We're going to do 10 minus 5 times 3. If we refer to PEMDAS here, we notice that multiplication and division come before addition and subtraction. So we're actually going to do this multiplication here of negative 5 times 3. We're going to do that first. So negative 5 times 3 would be negative 15. So my numerator is now 10 minus 15. And we know that 10 minus 15 would be negative 5. So therefore, our numerator is negative 5. Now if we take a look at our denominator, we just have addition and subtraction, and those are equal to each other in the order of operations, so we just work from left to right. So we're going to do 4 plus 25 first, which is 29, and then we're going to bring over our minus 4. 29 minus 4 is 25, And then when we do negative 5 divided by 25, we don't want the decimal. We want to keep it as a fraction, but we want to reduce that fraction. The reduced fraction here, they're both divisible by 5. So negative 5 divided by 5 would be negative 1. 25 divided by 5 would be 5. Our answer is negative 1/5. Okay, moving on to number 4 here. We have these lines right here. You may have seen these before. They're called absolute value bars. And what they mean is the distance from 0. So distance is always positive. So when we simplify them, we are going to change that number, if it is negative, to a positive number. Okay. Also, they are a grouping symbol, so they act kind of like parentheses. So we do, in the order of operations, work with those or whatever's inside it first. So we have 3 minus 8 here. 3 minus 8 is negative 5. So when we simplify and bring down our 6 plus, we have 6 plus the absolute value of negative 5. Absolute value means distance from 0. So how many units is negative 5 from 0? It's 5 units. So we remove the absolute value bars by making that number positive. And then we just do 6 plus 5, which is 11. So that's our answer there. Okay, so number 5, there's a little bit more going on here, but we definitely have parentheses to start with. So in the numerator, we have all of this in parentheses. So again, because it's a fraction, we are going to simplify our numerator and denominator separately. So if we simplify what's in parentheses in the numerator, we have negative 10 plus 3 squared. Well, we know we do exponents before we do addition in the order of operations. And when we simplify this, 3 squared would be 9. So we actually have negative 10 plus 9. And yes, you could simplify that, but I'm going to simplify that a little bit later. Okay, on the bottom, I do see 2 sets of parentheses, but there's nothing going on inside of these parentheses. Therefore, they're just acting as multiplication. So we really just have 15 times negative 2 minus 3 times negative 9. We always do multiplication before subtraction, so I'm going to do my multiplication first. So I have 15 times negative 2. 15 times negative 2 is negative 30. And I'm going to do my negative 3 times negative 9, which is positive 27. And if you feel you don't need to take this many steps and you can simplify it a little bit faster, feel free to do that. Okay, inside the parentheses here in the numerator now, we have negative 10 plus 9, which is negative 1. And then on the denominator, we have negative 30 plus 27, which is negative 3. 6 times negative 1 is negative 6. So we have negative 6 divided by negative 3, which is positive 2. Okay, last problem here. Again, we see that we have absolute value bars. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at those like they're parentheses. We're going to evaluate this and this first. So inside the first absolute value bars, we have negative 2 times 3. Negative 2 times 3 is negative 6. And then inside the other absolute value bars, we have the absolute value of negative 7. Well, we said the absolute value is the distance. The number is from 0. Negative 7 is 7 units from 0. Or we just change the number from being negative to positive to remove the absolute value bars. Notice we still have this subtraction sign here. That's not coming from inside the absolute value bars. That's coming from right here. Okay, so now moving on here, we have the absolute value of negative 6. Absolute value of negative 6 is positive 6. But one thing here, notice that these two numbers are written right next to each other. So the operation between them is multiplication. It's not addition. That's one common mistake there. A lot of people will add those two numbers together, but you actually want to multiply. It's negative 5 times the absolute value of negative 6, which is positive 6. We do multiplication before we do subtraction, so we do negative 5 times 6, which is negative 30, and negative 30 minus 7 is negative 37. So that is it for the order of operations video. Hopefully that will help.